In the chaos after the fight, Billy Bob had led his new cargo back to his ship and blasted off before security could figure out what had happened. When he had started up the airlock sequence, though, the lady nearly collapsed under the gravity, and he quickly set it to galactic standard and gave his apologies. He had to toss Mittens out of the co-pilot seat, letting the startled cat fly through the lower gravity, while he strapped in and got his Longhorn fired up, tearing off to the space lanes. Phew, that could have gone a lot worse, don't you think? As far as he was concerned, he was off scot-free. What he didn't know was that Captain Asshole had survived. Back on a hunter-killer class, disguised as an atlas, he was clutching his face while the doctor tended to his face wound. The mechanical arms of the computer aide moving to assist, as the glass was removed from parts of his face.
Cast Leader Bleebob, what happened?
The creature growled out and winced, as his face was tended to by machine and comrade alike.
The diplomat hired a Death Order mercenary to assist her. She's more dangerous and cunning than we thought. I think she came here to meet him. We're trying to identify the ship's heading. Just look for the ship itself on the path to the capital. In the past she was hard to track because she travelled alone, but now I think she'll stay with the Death Order. We must stop her from reaching the capital. If she does, the galaxy as we know it will end.
Technician Grigg skittered into the room.
We found the ship for a freight service. It forgot to close out the fake profile it must have set up for being hired. Excellent. What do we know? We're looking up the specification of the ship right now, but here's the personal info on that Death World mercenary.
Bleebob read over the info, unsure how he was supposed to pronounce the name. It looked bizarre to him. The mechanical hands of the machine yanked another glass shard from his face as he roared out in pain and anger, screaming out nice and loud.
Mark my words, I will have my revenge on you. Billy Bob, space trucker.
Billy Bob was smiling as he settled his Longhorn into the FTL lane. Wow, 10 billion credits? Serious? No falling? He looked over at the diplomat. Yes, my mission is very important. My people gave me a large sum of money to get to the capital. 10 billion credits? Indeed. 10 billion? Yes. Billion with a B? I think you're referencing letters. My translator is confused. Right. He wrote out the number in galactic standard trade symbols on a napkin he had in the cabin. She looked at it and nodded, which his translator told him was the same for her species as his. Wow. He leaned back in his seat, a big stupid grin on his face. Yes, if I manage to get there, my device will end the galaxy as we know it. 10 billion! In fact, that's why the ass-face empire is trying to stop me. I'm going to be one of the richest people alive. Many speculate about the horrors the device will cause, but my species knows it will bring about a better galaxy. 10 fucking billion. I'm excited. Finally, his brain registered that she'd been talking. Did he ask her to repeat herself? Nah, it was probably nothing important. She was just playing along with his rambling. He couldn't shake the stupid grin on his face at the thought. What was he going to do with the money? Besides, buy himself a bigger ship. Wait. What if he spent all the money on the biggest possible ship he could buy? But then he'd need a crew. Shit. He pondered his impending wealth as she spoke up and he finally listened. Excuse me, but this isn't heading towards the capital. He looked over his heading for a moment, thinking about the route in his head. Yeah, but I have cargo to drop off first. Wait, you intend to deliver your current cargo despite my contract? We haven't signed anything formal yet, lady. What's your name? Emily Earhart. Billy Bob paused at that and looked over at her. What? That's my name. Seriously? I think my translator is approximating pronouns on me. Hold on. Mentally, he told his implant to give him a text readout of what he was hearing, and not override what he was hearing. Then he asked her to repeat her name. Emily Yikneff. The text in his vision read Emily Earhart. Quickly he turned the translator back over to override his hearing center, and looked surprised. That's kind of amazing. Your first name sounds like a human name. I'm guessing your last name is sort of like 2 words mushed together? With that, she nodded. It is unusual then. Most other species have very different names. Stuff that's impossible to pronounce. He laughed at that. Shit right they do, lady. Well, nice to meet you, Emily. I'm Billy Bob. She blinked at that for a moment, seeming a little confused. That's similar to a name used by the ass-faces. He chuckled for a moment at his translator, then glanced over. Wait, what? They also have human-sounding names? Is the term human meant for your species, or a specific clan? Species. I'm from the American clan. Best fucking clan there is. Well, then if your species all have the same names... Well, okay, they're mostly like American names then. But it would be like if some Korean guy met an alien named Kim. I know a Kim. Shut the fuck up. Did I say something wrong? Sorry, exclamation of surprise. Oh, my translator isn't totally set up for your species, it seems. Duly noted. Billy Bob nodded to himself for a moment, impressed and amazed, to find out that other aliens had good names. He was tired of all those Z's and Q's and X's. They never seemed to pronounce X's like he felt X's should be pronounced. Shit. Xenos should totally be Xenos. Then he had to backtrack the conversation in his head, since he realized they'd gotten off track at some point. Oh, right. I'm heading to a colony to finish my current contract, yes. But this path on your Navicob puts us days off course. Yeah, well, sorry, Emily, but I've never been late to a delivery, let alone skip one, so I'll get you to the capital after this. But I'm offering you 10 billion credits. Yes, and I appreciate that, but I'm not changing my mind on this. I have a reputation after all. The diplomat leaned back in her seat and then shrugged it off. Honor code. He nodded at that. Something along those lines. I can respect that. Billy Bob was settled into the FTL lanes, moving along steadily with all the other traffic sticking to the gates set up by the galactic government. Opposing traffic to your left, keep right, just like the roads back home. Aside from those limeys, course. But if you refuse to use metric, or worse yet, space metric, then he wouldn't hold driving wrong against them. Couldn't pull that shit in an FTL lane, though. Hit someone going several times the speed of light? What would happen? A black hole? He wasn't sure and didn't intend to find out. He let out a sigh as he began to relax, figuring that they had another 2 space days of travel, and he'd better get back into his groove. The diplomat looked ready to speak up when he heard the crackle of his FTL proxband receiver. Breaker, breaker, big bomber, you got your ears on? This is Flying Snorlax, 410. Billy Bob looked over at the diplomat for a moment. You're going to want to turn your translator off for this. It's just going to crash. The hooded figure stared at him as he pulled up his proxband mic. That's a 10-4, Flying Snorlax. I've got my ears on. Didn't know anyone else was around these parts. I heard you had a 99 out here. I'm Alice in Wonderland at the moment. My 01 is supposed to be ass past the gas factory, but everything I'm seeing is heading down Burrito Bog or back to the armpit. Shit, Snorlax, you got a hang of bogs at the turd ball, and full on down to double nickel on the local dirt roads. Shit, I run out of big road? Sure have. Alright, big bomber. Hey, I sent you a packet of my recent turns. Got yours? Billy Bob tapped a few buttons on his console. Send it on over, good buddy. Right, well, I'm heading on out, good buddy. Need to find the turbo and probably water the engines. 10-4. There was a beep as he received the packet of information and set his mic back down. When he was finished, the diplomat was still staring at him. You're right, my translator crashed. Don't worry about it. That was some guy named Ted, friend of mine. He was just trying to get to his first stop and heard I had a final stop out here somewhere. I gave him directions, then he sent me an info packet. What was in the packet? Turns for a game we play over FTL Progs called Space Civ Tycoons. Don't worry about it, he's a bit of an insane gamer in that respect, plans out his moves way ahead. I really don't understand any of this. The figure shook her head. Space trucker stuff. It's basically a code, but more to keep things short than anything else. That was short? She asked to his quick reply. To us. Once more she shook her head. So, your species doesn't mind being alone in space? She asked him, as he gave a smile. Not at all. Kinda nice. A little boring, but it's a nice enough way to make a living. Get to go to new places, look out across the void, and see some really gorgeous systems. To be honest, I thought our species was unique in this. All the crews I've seen need upwards of 50 bodies in order to feel comfortable. She nodded at that. It's not unique. Just very rare. Something about being lonely in the void terrifies most species, or drives them insane quickly enough. But not yours either? She shook her head at that. No, we enjoy the solitude as much as company. Well, I'm new to the galactic scene, so you'll have to fill me in a bit on that sort of thing. Yes, I was wondering about that. Your species hasn't even sent their diplomats out this far, but you space truckers are flying beyond anything else in order to deliver supplies to other people's colonies? Yeah, sure. They don't like it, since they want to present a nice sculpted picture of what humans are, but most humans are going to be like me, just a hard-working sort making a living. So, that is normal? She asked, and pointed at his gut. He set a hand on it and felt a little self-conscious for a moment. Then he smiled. Sure is. We store food and fat in an internal pouch. The mark of a healthy male is to have some bulk in this area to show we're well fed and strong. If we're missing one, then either we're malnourished or worse. Worse? Yeah. Some humans have this rare disease where part of their brain is filled with regular meat. We call them meatheads. They work out too much and get really well-defined muscles. It's unhealthy and self-destructing, but they're still accepted in society because they can't help it if they have a disease. Billy Bob hoped that she was using a freemium translator that didn't inform her that he was lying through his teeth. Fascinating. Damn, he was good. So you were selected for this job through a caste system? No. We get to choose for ourselves after mandatory government service after high school, or college, depending on how far we got. How far did you get? 2 years in a community college, then enlisted. Tested well on physical aptitude and mechanical aptitude, very well on isolation. They made me a fighter-bomber pilot, which is technically an officer, but an officer of the lowest rank who can't actually boss anyone around, since the flight crews are watched by the deck officer. There was another pause. What's a fighter-bomber? He grinned at that. She might be from a species that didn't mind being alone in space, but it sounded like humans were still the only crazy bastards who had figured that out. Well, looks like I've got some explaining to do. Billy Bob began to explain to her his training back on Earth. After early testing, they taught him how to sail a boat, and then told him to sail across the Pacific on his own. A month later, he made it to Bangkok, and a week after that, he made it to Australia, where he was supposed to head in the first place. Then they dropped him off on the dark side of the moon, gave him a heading and some supplies. 2 days later, he made it to the designated base, and his flight training began. Even among humans who didn't mind being alone, it took a special breed to be okay with being truly and entirely alone. That concept, even on a habited planet, freaked most Xenos out. Some humans could be alone in a void and just smile at the nothingness around them. Most species couldn't fathom the thought. They were raised on millions of years of herd or pack mentality. Humans have been hunters, and while they achieved great things together, they were happy being spread out. It was also why their population was low compared to other species. Some people needed to live in the suburbs, some needed to live in the country, and there were plenty who needed to live so far from the nearest other person that if there was an emergency, they fixed it themselves or just died. He told her about humanity's early days and the First Contact War, how they had been found, not by the galactic government, but an aggressive species of space beetles. Humans had never bothered to learn their names. The space beetles struck first in aggression, seeing they had better tech. The humans scrambled to defend their 2 extrasolar colonies in Sol, while sending off small bombers equipped with jump drives and the massive collection of nukes humans still had. They knew nothing about FTL lanes or the bigger galactic government. Their scientists had devised a way to sort of skip through space, travelling through something else. He didn't know what, and they didn't cover that in community college. So they'd hop along through deep space for weeks or months at a time, and then show up to glass a bug planet. In the end, most of the space battle fleet was intact, but all their planets were dead when they surrendered. The fact that we had destroyed every single one of their planets was a surprise to human leaders, who assumed the Beetles had far more systems, or would have surrendered earlier. Instead of trying to make amends, they instead tricked the bugs to a meeting spot on an already dead world. Then we showed up, glassed their entire fleet, and knocked the planet into a star, in the hopes no one ever found out we killed an entire species without learning a damn thing about them. Sort of like when a kid breaks something while the parents are out, and instead of admitting it, tries to make it look like the thing was never there at all. Somehow, everyone forgot how that never works. The first contact with the greater galactic government had been a fleet of warships congratulating us on our first victory in an interstellar war. And then they told us if we ever wiped out a species again, they would wipe us out. Strict, but fair. From then on out, it was just border skirmishes, which were allowed. Humans had strength and determination, but they always lacked numbers. Numbers counted for a lot. So the government started new programs to give tax breaks and benefits to people who had as many kids as possible, and then moved somewhere other than Earth. He was about to go on, but at this point in the conversation, he did something he was used to doing when he was alone. The problem with being a solo trucker was when he forgot to watch himself around company.
What was that noise?
What?
That strange noise?
She asked.
Oh, I was off gassing.
Your species has gas sacs?
Sort of. There was an awkward pause before the smell reached her.
Oh, deity, what is that smell?
Methane, I think.
The diplomat made a few gagging sounds, waving three of her hands in front of her face as she got up and retreated to the back of his cabin, while his face took in a nice shade of red.
Oh, I can still smell it!
It's not that bad.
It smells like a native creature died and rotted in the sun for days.
She stepped into the bathroom, as the door sealed shut, and he heard the hum of the vent. Well, guess story time is over for now. He reached forward and turned the music on, trying to drown out the sounds of a distressed diplomat in the bathroom. And so ends another chapter in the adventure of Billy Bob, Space Trucker.